An essay from the Wall Street Journal actually dropped this week suggesting that American women are giving up on marriage, citing that major demographic shifts have put men and women on divergent paths. One of the statistics that the Wall Street Journal focused on is that women are increasingly, although it's not a new trend since almost the last 20 years, getting more college degrees than men. So women looking for men who also have college degrees have a much smaller population of men to marry. Forbes did find that when these women choose to or are married, college-educated women do have the longest lasting marriages. And as I said earlier, actually more men than women are looking for long-term relationships, with 30% of single women looking for romance compared to about half of men. I will clarify that that is all men, keeping in mind that as someone asked me on Instagram when I posted this infographic, where I post all the infographics featured in this video, that is young men, which I think their cutoff was for ages 18 to 25. And they said that there's about twice as many single men in that age group as there are single women. However, there are more total men looking for relationships than there are men, as found in this study when looking at all men across all age ranges. And when we then look at men ages 18 to 25, about half have never approached a woman in real life. Notably, the women in this study did admit that they have high expectations, which is not the same as unfair expectations. And I should clarify from my earlier infographic that living alone or being alone is not the same as lonely. Those are actually two different stat groups. So just because an individual has chosen to be alone does not also mean that that individual is lonely. Let's not confuse causation with correlation or correlation with causation, because in this case, it actually might be a choice. Another interesting fact, as this is a personal finance channel that I run here, is that married couples actually have about 3 times the wealth of single households. So we would expect that a married couple would have double the wealth of a single household. But in fact, when they're able to combine their wealth, they are able to triple their wealth. And as I showed in an earlier video, and I'll display again later in this video, married men also make more money than all genders and groups at about a peak age of 47 to 54. Additionally, more single women than single men own homes in the United States. About 3 million more homes are owned by single women than single men. And it had nothing to do with divorce. Actually, the 3 primary reasons is that single women prioritize home ownership more than single men. They had higher college education attainment, and typically in the United States, individuals with college educations have more homes than the non-college educated, and single women, including widowed, had longer life expectancies than men in general. And generally speaking, women live longer than men in the United States and have a longer life expectancy. So we can look at the state of marriage in the United States in these 3 charts, as I ended there with single women owning more homes than single men. Average marriage rates themselves have actually been decreasing in the United States as Americans overall marry later for both men and women, reaching a record high of nearly 31 for men and an average age of nearly 29 for women. And marriage rates and divorce rates are both down in the United States, while home ownership rates are up. If you jump to this chapter of the video, a quick review, I'm sharing why couples divorced in the United States. And before I wrap this video, I'll give you 13 signs that your marriage may be at risk of divorce, how to fix those issues, and a resource that you can find linked in the video description below about how to find both pre and marital counseling, because keeping in mind that 95% of divorcees believe their marriage could have been saved. First, I think it's important to dispel the rumor that half or 50% of marriages end in divorce. It's closer to 40%, and it's even lower when you look at if you remove for second and third marriages. Second marriages have a greater rate of divorce, followed only by or exceeded only by third marriages, which have a greater rate of divorce. And about 6% of divorced couples remarry. Surprised to no divorcee watching this video, divorce in the United States is expensive, with an average cost of about $7,000, and the average length of marriage for that divorce is around 8 years. I'll also point out that if a couple makes it to 10 years, their rate or chances of divorce drops down to 5%. Yes, less than 5% of couples that are married 10 years will ever divorce. So your milestone for a successful marriage might be not forever, but trying to get to that 10-year demarcation, which might then lead to forever. The average age in the United States has been increasing and reached a new record high, with average age for men being around 31 and the average age for first marriage for women being around nearly 29. Both marriage in the United States and divorce in the United States is down and is at near a 20-year low in the United States as Americans marry later or not at all. In fact, a new record high at age 40, about 25% of Americans in the United States will have never married. The average age for divorce in the United States is 46 for men and 44 for women. It is also true that the majority of divorces are initiated by one party, and at 69%, that majority is mostly women. And while that is true, I think it's also important to keep in mind why couples divorce, with lack of support at number 1, infidelity at number 2, and a three-way tie for lack of compatibility, lack of intimacy, and too much conflict. Because I certainly don't want this video to be mistaken for encouraging anyone, man or woman, to stay in an unhappy relationship. Most marriages, or about 60%, include at least one partner who is marrying for the first time. However, about 40% of new marriages include a partner who is remarrying, and keeping in mind that second and third marriages respectively have a higher or greater chance of divorce the second time around, with third marriages having a 70% divorce rate. Because conflict is the number 3 reason for divorce, here are the top types of conflict that marriages have, including career choices, parenting differences, and division of household labor. Couples who live together first actually have a higher rate of divorce. They looked into some reasons for why this might be, and couples who tend not to live together before marriage do so for either cultural or religious reasons, and those couples who do so for cultural or religious reasons overall tend to stay together longer or have a lower chance of overall divorce rates. And finally, divorce rates do decrease for households that are financially successful. Not surprising, because financial stress is a major leading cause of divorce, with households in poverty having some of the highest divorce rates. The divorce rate steadily decreases from 40 to 30% once you have a household income of $200,000. It then steadies, and then it does not decrease again until you have a household income of around $600,000, with household incomes at number 1, that would place them in the top 1% of households in the United States. And number 2, their divorce rates are around 25%. As we move towards the wrap, I think it's important to do a side-by-side comparison of the biggest factors for getting married, the 13 signs a marriage is at risk of divorce, which you can find here in the middle, and the biggest factors for getting divorced. So for those of you looking to avoid divorce, whether you are married or thinking about marriage, keep in mind that you might want to look at column number 1 and these 13 signs of risk of divorce in column number 2 here. Remember that nearly 95% of divorcees say their marriage could have been saved. If you're looking for a therapist or a resource, whether premarital or otherwise, you can find a link in the video description below. Here to my right are what divorcees believe could have saved their marriage. And while 50% of U.S. adults express some support for prenups, only 1 in 5 or less than 20% of married couples has a prenup